So I've heard two different pieces of information this last week that I'm sort of mulling over. The first is that more billionaires have come out of the financial services industry than any other industry, and the second is that 90% of millionaires might be made from real estate, but 100% of billionaires are made from private equity. And I think that it's important to begin to discern the difference between how we think about some of these things. I think that, both real estate and private equity are methods of, leveraging capital from other sources to acquire assets or build assets that we can then add value to, right? And ultimately, it's all about sort of acquiring assets that we can increase the value of with our time, while also generating cash flow simultaneously, right? And then just accumulating. Some people say that you want to accumulate as many as you want, but look at Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs had one, Apple. That's it. You look at a lot of the entrepreneurial billionaires, and it wasn't about quantity at all. It was about creating tremendous value in one asset. And I think that when we think about private equity, we tend to think about the financial markets, right? But the truth is that the underlying value to both of these asset classes of real estate and private equity is actually in the entrepreneurial ability of the individual, right? And so the point is that we can think about things like private equity and say I want to get into private equity. I want to, how do I, buy businesses and all the rest of it. And these are important. They're important skills to learn. But the thing is that it's all about being able to be an entrepreneur and take risks that most other people are not willing to take. Put your name on the line and go to work. And that's it. And, when I think about how I got started trying to start businesses, trying to do startups like back in the noughts, and it didn't go so well. And that's very common for startups, right? And so I bought my first business back in 2006. Now I've acquired, 7 or 8 of them. I don't even know how to keep track anymore. I've done a lot of my investing in the private capital markets. Now starting to move into real estate just a little bit, but the returns are so much better buying businesses. And so, the thing is that when it comes down to how to get started in private equity, okay, number one, understand the first thing you need to do is be an entrepreneur, be able to understand the private capital markets and access to capital and investors and all the rest of it, put your own money to use, skin in the game, all that. But two, you need to be able to build value, okay? And so in my mind, the best way to do it was sort of my path, right? Which was, I bought one company in 2006. I ran that as CEO for about 7 years and then ended up selling to an acquisition target. And then I went on to, buy 6 more companies over the following 3 years, right? So, and now I'm looking at, my next deal might be I'm looking at a deal might be like 35 million, right? But you don't start by buying a company that's like $35 million, right? You start by buying one that is smaller, that you can, get an SBA loan and go acquire, and then, get to work, build the equity, build the value of the company, and go from there. One thing leads to another. And, when you're in the private capital markets, whether you're the entrepreneur or you're the person in the financial services industry that is getting you capital, okay, the lender, okay, maybe someone you hired to help raise capital, maybe someone who is helping you go public, okay, so you can access cheaper capital. That's the whole point, going public in my mind. All these things are important, but they come in time. Steve Jobs didn't become a billionaire by working on private equity. He became a billionaire by being an entrepreneur first, okay? And ultimately, you need investors. You need access to capital. You need lenders. You need all of these things. And people like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, all the billionaire entrepreneurs that we could sit around and name, they've all done it, right? And so it's sort of graduating from being an entrepreneur to being able to play in the major leagues. But getting started is the most important piece, okay? After Buy Then Build became a Wall Street Journal bestseller and all the rest of it, and the best-selling book on acquisition entrepreneurship, meaning the intersection of how to use financing in the private capital markets and entrepreneurship to buy small businesses, I started a company called Acquisition Lab. The goal being to build the single best acquisition accelerator in the world. We have world-class education, a vetted community, all the tools, resources, professional network that you need, and we've acquired our members have acquired over 200 million in acquisitions. So check it out, acquisitionlab.com. Hope to see you on the inside. Thanks.